All right, so let's just have a conversation. I am Tom Madigan. I am here with Mr. Corky Quakenbush Sensei and Mr. Lenny Sly Sensei, and we're going to talk about Aikido. And these two are seemingly complete opposites. We have the soft and loving style of Aikido here, and we have the more tactical self-defense style of Aikido here. But I'm going to let them speak for themselves, and we're going to have a discussion about the two seemingly polar opposites of Aikido. So I will step out, and let's have these two iconic Aikido instructors have a terrific discussion.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that's a big misconception it is.
What's that?
That we have really opposing viewpoints.
True.
Because as you know through our conversations, there's a lot we share in common. You know, and in fact, the first time we had an encounter together was on that teleconference call, and there was no disagreement about is Aikido a martial art.
No, there wasn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't.
And I think that that's probably what people would assume that is different for me, that I don't think of it as a martial art, but I absolutely do.
So Aikido is a martial art. So how does that fit into self-defense, Mr. Sly?
Well, first you got to know how to use it. You know, in a self-defense, context. Basically, it's doing things in the dojo is we like to refer to as like kata form and stuff like that. And a lot of people tend to talk down upon that, especially like off of my YouTube video and stuff. That's just kata. That doesn't translate to the real world. Well, it's real simple. It's like you can sit there and pretend like you're actually driving an automobile, like in a simulator, but it's not going to be the same thing until you actually go out, get in a car, and drive. You know what I'm saying? So practicing technique on the mat in kata form isn't going to translate to what's really going to happen in the real world, because you're not going to do the technique the same way on the mat that you would do to somebody if somebody was trying to inflict great bodily harm.
So then why do we do things like kata or...
So you can learn the principles of technique, in my opinion. So you can learn principles of technique, you can learn the fundamental movements. Having people that can take exceptional ukemi is a huge, huge advantage, because when you get people that are afraid to fall or that can't do break falls, or they look at the ground as like they're being pushed off like the Grand Canyon to do a roll, and they're like, 3-step process to do a roll, when if you're training on tatami, they're 2 inches thick, you can virtually be dropped on your head and you'll be fine. When you have somebody that is very skilled with ukemi, and that person obviously gives themselves to you for the training aspect, you could then exercise full power and commitment of technique. You could almost, it's like trial and error in a sense. With like my primary uke rod, I've groomed him since day one. With ukemi, and he didn't start Aikido with me. He started with a different organization, and his Aikido is completely different than what it was when he first started. And having somebody that commits to full attack and commits to full ukemi, that's going to give you an opportunity to see what you got, so to speak, and you can take it to the next level. And you can train in a sense to where the attacks are 100% real, to where you could then apply your skills to that. Because if you don't have that training platform and it's always, soft and light, that's not what happens on the street. And anybody that wants to beg to differ with me, can kiss my ass, because I know what happens in the real world.
Because you were a bouncer for a long time.
Exactly.
In Chicago.
Nobody slaps you like tries to bitch slap you on the street. They're trying to knock your head off, and they don't stop until you have to put them down. And unfortunately for me, it's something that it's not that situations I've been in I wanted to do this. It was something that I had to do. It was necessary. Otherwise, next thing that's going to happen to me is get a bottle over the head, or a chair getting broken over my back, or something like that. From a bar standpoint, from what I did for employment. But that's just the way how I look at it,
Yeah, thank you. I want Mr. Quakenbush to respond on the nature of attack, because it sounds like you guys are in agreement about something else too, about how the attack has to be realistic. Can you speak to that?
Well, first I'd like to just hit on why I think Aikido is a martial art. And first I start with the definition of martial art. Martial art is a system of movement designed to protect someone from attack, from being controlled or damaged by an attacker. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Right. And the reason why I see Aikido as different is that most martial arts, including defense-oriented Aikido, come from a standpoint of achieving that goal by destroying or controlling the attacker. But Aikido has another option to it, where you can do that in a way that doesn't destroy or even control, actually. There's a semblance of control, which goes into your question, but you can do it in a way that doesn't hurt the other person. And in terms of the realistic attack, absolutely. And in Aikido, I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with the way Aikido has been traditionally taught, is through this technique emulation model. And when you have technique emulation as your sole principle in practice, I mean, for beginners, I think that's perfect because people have to learn how to move in those ways, have to get their bodies used to making those turns and things that we do in Aikido. But after that, to do a really complex technique, which to me is a composite of the elemental parts of Aikido, and you can look at those, you can look at any technique and break it down into its elements. But a technique, as what's commonly known as a technique in Aikido, is a long string of those things that have to exist supposedly in this form. So in order for a beginner to learn that, someone has to go along with that. They can't do what's realistic to an attacker because the guy trying to learn the technique will never learn it. They'll never have time because attacks happen really quickly. So what it's done is created a culture of collusiveness in the way Aikido is practiced. And that's something that becomes ingrained, and even people who don't believe that they're colluding are actually, in some form or another, really negating the idea of what a true attack is.
So let's talk about ukemi, which is how to attack and then how to do disaster recovery, which could be rolling and falling. And there's more to ukemi than that, but that's the gist of it. So if somebody attacks you really hard, how do you reconcile all of that force coming, and how do they not get hurt? Or do they get hurt, or does it matter if they get hurt? Mr. Sly?
Well, what does the damage is the ground. That's what really does the damage when it comes to Aikido. You know, I've said this before, and I've gotten ripped on it before for the little saying that I have: if it works, if it hurts, it works. Okay, but ultimately the damage comes from the ground. So when the person's actually, you know, being thrown, or a wrist lock or joint locks being applied and they're being taken out on the ground, when they get slammed on the ground, the ground is what actually really causes the damage as far as I'm concerned. Because people on the street don't know how to fall. And you don't walk around with the Miyagi-Do, you know, Aikido bandana on your forehead saying that I practice Aikido. No one out there is going to know that I'm an Aikido person unless they've seen me on YouTube and they've recognized me.
They've all seen you.
And then I doubt they're going to attack you then,
I'm saying
right?
the general public, you know what I'm saying? It's like if I walk over to the gas station right now and, you know, somebody starts a beef with me, chances are they're not going to know who I am. You know, they're not going to know, oh, this guy's an Aikido guy, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're not going to do that. But it's just like, I don't really advertise. I mean, I'll wear a school t-shirt and stuff like that, but, you know, how many people wear t-shirts of, you know, gun clubs or this, that, whatever? It doesn't mean that they're a sharpshooter or a Navy SEAL. It just can be a shirt that they're wearing, you know, or Harley Davidson. Does that mean that you work for Harley Davidson? No, it's just a t-shirt. You know, so most people aren't really going to say, oh, yeah, this is an Aikido person, unless they, you know me from something else. But people out there, they don't know how to fall. So, you know, you apply an Aikido technique to somebody that doesn't see it coming. And that's the thing. No one's ever going to see this coming. You know, so you get all the people on the internet going, oh, where's the video footage of you doing Aikido? You know, why is there no live Aikido footage out there of somebody beating somebody? Because I don't walk around with a camera crew wherever I go, okay? I'm not on, you know, Housewives of Las Vegas with a camera crew behind me recording every frickin' move that I do 24 hours a day to make a reality TV show. So I don't have people recording me wherever I go to the store, go out with my family, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden I get into some beef and You know, Jenna, make sure you get this on film so I can upload this to YouTube so I can show everybody in the world that Aikido works. It's, you know, we didn't have that at the bar either when I've had to do stuff, you know, and it's just, people don't get that. People on the street don't know. They don't know what you know, what I know, what Corky knows, what, you know, Rod, Bob, Steve, Tristan, Nick, nobody, they don't know. So how are they going to know how to prepare for that and be able to fall? On top of it, when they go to attack you, how do they know what you're going to do? They're not going to know what you're going to do. It's like, you know, when you look at, like, I hate to bring this up, but when you look at the MMA game or boxing, for example, right? You got two competitors that are going to fight in a boxing match. What do you think those guys do months on end prior or before they actually go into a fight?
I would say they're studying each other's stuff.
Exactly. They're watching fight tape. They're watching how this guy strategizes, how he, you know, what is his most common punch, what, you know, what's he going to attack with, what's his guard like, what happens when, you know, somebody throws a combination of 3-4 punches, how does he respond to that? And they're going to sit there and they're going to start looking at all the variables and go, okay, this is what he did 10 out of 10 times. This is what he did 5 out of 5 or 5 out of 10 times. This is what he did 8 out of 10 times. So they're going to have a game plan on how to be able to handle that type of situation.
Okay.
For
And,
us.
you know, and here's an interesting thing about that situation anyway, and this calls back to what you're saying, is that in a fight, in a competition fight, in a sport fighting event, it's 52% defense. Because it doesn't matter how many punches you get, and if you're not standing at the end of the round, you're out. If you watch fighters, they're not attacking like real people on the street attack. They're coming in very guarded. They don't just attack blindly and crazily like.
Absolutely.
So what's the difference between, I mean, why? What's the intentional difference between a boxing match and someone who is attacking?
The intentional is that somebody wants to cause great bodily harm. They want to smash your head into squish you like a grape. They want to make you bleed. They want to hurt you for whatever reason. Boxers, they're getting paid.
Yeah, and there's
It's a sport.
another thing too. The intention in going into a competitive match is not at all the same intentions as what happens in a real life situation. First of all, because in a competitive match, both people are there by agreement. When you were a bouncer,
absolutely.
you didn't come into this going, okay, come on, bring it on. You
No.
came in to do your job.
Yeah.
And that's a different intention than somebody who's going in there to play to see who can win, knowing, first of all, that there are rules that apply. No one's going to pull a weapon. No one's friends are going to get involved.
Absolutely.
It's not a tag situation. And you know that there's a reasonable expectation you're not going to die in
Yeah.
that competitive match. A reasonable expectation. In a real life situation, the stakes are completely different because an attacker who's got a life or death situation, it's making them attack for whatever reason, that person has gone way beyond the defense mentality. If you look at the way the brain works, the reason why people don't come in with a gun and shoot somebody, but instead come in and go, you motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you.
I didn't hear that. Can you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
You motherfucker.
Mother flower.
Yeah, the reason that doesn't happen is because
Okay, I need to get off this video because if right now swearing involved,
Wait
this
a minute.
is classical Lenny Sly footage.
Can I bring
Uncensored, unfiltered. But yeah, you're
okay,
absolutely
right in.
you're absolutely right though.
But here's the
yin and
thing.
yang,
Anyway,
something
the
like
mother who doesn't pull the gun, who doesn't pull the trigger right away, is because there's already an inherent understanding. It's all the way the brain's been formulated through millions of years of evolution and through the way programming happens from the time we're born about the levels of a threat. And there's in the back of everyone's head, when they've got the gun, this is a defensive thing, more or less. The bullet is the offensive attack.
Isn't that
okay?
an intimidation factor as well?
Intimidation.
Because you could say, "Give me your wallet,"
Right.
because you don't know. Because if
Instead of just coming up
And
and shooting you and
just
taking
take it
your
himself.
wallet.
Exactly.
Right. Because the brain understands that when that bullet is fired,
There's no
everything changes.
no turning
Everything changes in a spectacular way. And the thing is, if you think about somebody, say that one more time, say it one more time, and the person goes, right? That is a threshold that needs to be crossed. That threshold has just gone from defense to attack. And that is the threshold that really matters. And when you're thinking about a competitive match, that threshold is crossed a little bit at a time and then withdrawn. Crossed a little bit and withdrawn. When they see an opening, it's crossed, but then it comes back to defense. Most of a fight in a competitive sense is defensive.
Well, that's what Floyd Mayweather says, defense.
Yeah, and so that's why in a competitive fight, people are, come on, bring it on, because they're looking for that commitment.
Yeah.
Because at the moment of commitment, that's where the openings are.
So can I bring it back to the...
So why don't we have that in Aikido?
Have what?
That level of commitment, because
Well, there's a couple of reasons.
You and I come from the same. We originated on the same organization,
Right.
And that, I mean, do we want to mention what that organization is? ASU, Satomi Sensei.
Yeah.
There's your 15 minutes.
I'm proud
of
of
fame.
it. You know, Satomi Sensei's teachers, his students, I think are really groundbreaking instructors, including, you know, Kevin Shote Sensei.
I agree to a certain extent with that, but I mean, I've trained with a lot of those people back in the day, and it's like, you know, and I'm sure you could, not to get off topic right now, but just from your experience training in that, I mean, you remember when you were Q rank and you go to a seminar and you get some guy that's a high level black belt, whether, you know, Sandan, Yondan, I mean, for lack of better words, high level.
Sure.
And, you know, they wouldn't let you do the technique,
Right.
but then you would be taking ukemi from left and right because it was the proper etiquette and respecting to do,
Right.
but then you do, "Look, that doesn't work, let me show you how it's done, and then, you know, let me help you with that." And it's like, wait a minute, it's like, why is it that I have to comply to you, but you can't comply to me? But there was
Right.
no honesty in that attack because
Right.
one person, you would be giving the honest attack because you're being, you know, the respectful, proper etiquette uke, and then you get the other guy that doesn't do the same for you. And that's kind of like the problem that I've had with Aikido for quite some time is that, you know, you don't see a lot of serious punches to the face, and when you do, it's that punch, leave the arm out there, and then you magically catch the
Right.
hand out of the air. And I hate to say it, but, you know,
Well, that goes back to what I was saying about if you got to learn a technique, you're going to hang there with your fist out so the person can learn how to move in a relationship to that.
Yeah.
But then it becomes a habit.
exactly.
It becomes a habit of waiting for the person to go there. It's not the same mentality.
No,
It's
it's
a
not.
training mentality.
Exactly.
And so people rarely get the opportunity to really kind of feel what that real commitment is. Now for me, there's a couple of levels to that. One, if you're in a hard dojo, which the first dojo I actually attended was Nisho Sensei.
Okay.
And the guy asked for a volunteer. I had no Aikido experience. I volunteered, and he said, grab my wrist. So I grab his wrist, and the next thing I know, I'm on the floor in Nikyo. My wrist is going, mother. And I had two specific thoughts. The first was, wow, am I going to learn how to do that? But simultaneously, because I had no idea what he did, simultaneously I was like, you mother, where's my gun? Simultaneously, I have these thoughts. And that's the way the brain works. Because the brain is working on two levels. Like, the first level is, holy shit, am I going to learn how to do that? And the other one is, you just took advantage of me, man. I trusted you, and you put me on the floor in pain.
But hey,
Now,
did it
but
work?
here's the thing.
Did it work?
But here's the
Did
thing.
it work?
What
Did
I'm
it work?
getting at. Oh, it worked the first time. But the second time,
That's all you need is one time though.
yeah,
One
but
and
here's what
done.
I'm getting at. Here's what I'm getting at in terms of practice.
Okay.
Now, in terms of how that affects ukemi. Because the next time, I'm coming in there ready to fall.
Yeah.
Not really grabbing him the way I grabbed him the first time.
Yeah.
Now I'm faking him out because I'd rather take the fall than get hurt. So I'm giving him a fake impression now.
Okay.
And when you learn how to do that, because hey, beginners are the worst. Beginners are the ones that are going to crank you the hardest incorrectly, right?
True.
Because they're going to get it in their head. It's about twisting the wrist, so they're all about getting that wrist twisted. And so you learn how to take ukemi instead
save
of giving
yourself.
realistic ukemi.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that happens are the people like on the softer kind of Aikido people who are just going along for the ride, you know, because it's all about doing the dance. And again, but you know, for those people, sometimes it's not about the martial effectiveness. It's about, you know, the whatever else they get out of it, you know.
Which there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, exactly.
In my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
It's, you know, if that's what you do, then that's what you do.
However, on the other hand, I would say that, see, my illuminating moment was I was working with a beginner who was a trained boxer. And, you know, I was trying to show him Tenkan. So I got my wrist out and I'm going, okay, so you grab my wrist, but you got to really attack. I didn't have the language that I have now, so you got to really attack. It's going to conjure up 1,000 different intentions and 1,000 different people, right? And as a trained boxer, he understood that if he committed, he was, he didn't know what I was going to do. He didn't know how this was going to affect him. So he's kind of standoffish, And so I said, look, you got to really trust me and just really attack. So he goes, all right. And I got 2 hands around my throat, right? So after the initial shock, I'm like, okay, I know at least half a dozen techniques I've practiced hundreds of times, and nothing worked. This is after 18 years of training. 18 years, and nothing worked. Now, I wasn't defenseless at all. Target areas everywhere, right? But there wasn't anything that I could think of doing or was disposed to do that wasn't going to be destructive or wasn't going to be Aikido. It was all going to be different than Aikido.
Yeah.
So he was making himself vulnerable, but I had to step away and think, hey, if that happened to O-Sensei, would he punch the guy in the throat, which was my first option? And I thought, no, he would do Aikido. So I thought, well, what the hell have I been missing for 18 years? Because if this is true, what I'm doing, I shouldn't have been stuck in that situation. You see what I'm saying? So I had to go back to square one at that point. I said, this technique stuff isn't doing it for me. And I can either pretend that didn't happen or pretend it was some kind of non-real situation and, well, it'll work in real life and blah, blah, blah.
That was real life.
Exactly.
That was real life.
Exactly.
Because you gave him the green light of
Yes.
honest attack.
Right.
And that goes back to what we were talking about, or what I was saying about with the honest attack part. It's, you don't, when you have people that don't give honest attack or true intention behind the attack, because, you yourself as a teacher, you have somebody come up and take ukemi. Usually, from what I've learned, usually you don't say, hey, I'm doing this.
Right.
It's just, you make a gesture of some sort, punch the face, grab the wrist, whatever it may be, and they don't know what it is until after rep number 1.
Right.
And then 2, 3, 4, they make adjustments accordingly. But if you ask my uke rod, I never tell him what's going to happen. I'll motion. I'll say, mune dori, mune ski, cow ski, whatever, and he gives it to me.
It's really kind of an interesting thing, because in real Aikido, you're giving someone a choice without them knowing it.
Yeah.
And that happens in real life. Because you can imagine, you put your hand out, somebody's got an attack to mine and you put your hand out there. I've heard a lot of people say, well, we're going to start with a wrist grab. Well, people don't really do this. They do it all the time. They grab your wrist. I've seen it, man. I've seen it in real life fights. You grab the wrist so that arm is not operable.
So you can't be hit with that arm.
Yes, exactly.
But
anyway, there's this
that.
illusion that never happens. But I say, hey, look, if you present something to somebody, they got to deal with it. They got to clear that before they're within their range. And in order to do that, they either got to move it out of the way, they got to grab it to control it, or they got to ignore it and come through. But it doesn't matter, because your connector's out there anyway. So if you call for an attack, right, and they give you the wrong attack, that's not going to stop your Aikido.
No.
Yeah.
I'm just going to adjust.
Right.
But what you just said with how the wrist grabbing happens, that happens in MMA all the time. If you look at actual fights, when they get tied up and they start grappling, doing stand-up grappling, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen somebody grab onto somebody's arm or grab onto their wrist because their other arm is around their head, because they don't want to start getting punched in the face, so they're grabbing on the wrist. Now, it's not exactly the way how it would be done in Aikido, but it's still a form of restraining the actual person. So, yeah, it's not katate dori or kosa dori, or, sometimes you actually see mune dori a lot, because you see the guy grabbing on both arms, or both hands on one wrist. That does happen.
But that touches on an interesting subject, because depending on how they're grabbing and why they're grabbing, you're going to get a different thing happening in an intentional basis. Like the holding the arm back to keep it from punching you is not the same thing as using the arm to direct a control over something.
Yeah.
Controlling the arm is not the same thing as controlling the center.
True.
And that's where it starts to break down in terms of, well, is Aikido applicable here? Well, it depends on how you look at it. But those things are going to make a difference in the actual.
I have a couple of questions. This conversation is terrific. I just don't want it to go on too much longer because I'm excited to, get to.
Just let the camera roll.
But I did notice you guys agree on a lot, but I think I noticed something that you did disagree on. Mr. Sly says, the ground does the damage. Does the ground do the damage in your Aikido, Mr. Q?
Well, the ground will do the damage, absolutely. And I'll give you an example of how I know this. I was doing some research, and there was a story that was in a news item. I can't find it anymore. It was one of those things that was a local news item that's come and gone years ago. Two guys got into a bar fight, and they got separated, okay, by their friends. Okay, one guy got separated by his friends. The other guy goes off to the back corner of the bar. The other guy, after cooling down or whatever, starts over to the other guy again. Now, no one knew why he went over there. Maybe he was going to apologize. Maybe he was going to buy him a beer. Maybe he was going to say, F you again. But the other guy, when the guy got within range, punched him in the face. The guy went down. Police have been called. Police arrest the guy for aggravated assault. The other guy goes to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, the guy dies. So now it's not aggravated assault anymore. Now it's manslaughter. Now that's something I read. Now I was in Syracuse practicing at a dojo over there, and was talking to this guy after practice, and he said one of the Q students, first Q student, got into a bar altercation with 4 guys, right? Just arguments and stuff. Hey, you step outside. We'll talk about this outside or whatever. He goes outside. One guy, punch to the face, does a perfect Steven Seagal style Iraminage, right? Just beautiful. First Q student. This stuff gets learned really quickly, and real attacks are really fast, and if they're committed, Aikido happens so quickly and so easily, there's nothing to it. Anyway,
say this guy, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan wants to see video proof. It's the only way you're going to convince that knucklehead of anything. Right, Joe?
In convincing him. But anyway, I can show him how he can do
asshole.
Anyway, what I'm getting at is the Syracuse guy drops the guy. Now the guy's dropped on his own from his own punch, right? Everybody saw it. Police are called. When the police show up, that's when the guy finds out the guy on the ground is an off-duty police officer.
Oh.
His friends are there. So
wait a minute, the guy on the ground throws the punch at the first cue. The guy that throws the punch is an off-duty police officer.
Exactly.
That's f***ed up on so many levels.
Yeah. But anyway, the point was, down he went. His friends in uniform show up. They don't ask questions. They see their buddy on the floor, the bleeding head. They arrest that guy. Eventually, he gets cleared after about $100,000 in legal fees. So that's why, part of the reason why I want to find a way in my Aikido that when the guy hits the ground, he doesn't hit it in a way that his head is damaged. And that has to do with finding a way that your Aikido can be expressed. And for me, that's where it becomes a protective thing, because not only am I protecting that guy, I'm protecting myself. When the cameras start rolling, when the cameras get turned on,
but wait a minute. When you just say Aikido happens so fast, so by the time somebody gets a camera out, you're already scratching your butt.
Well, what I'm saying is if there is a camera rolling and they see me do this and some guy goes down and his head gets cracked, it's going to be different than if they see this guy do this and they say, oh man, look, that guy slipped, and the other guy's helping him to the floor.
It's interesting that you said that with somebody hitting their head on the ground.
And think about our Aikido. Most times, if people, like you said, if they don't know Ukemi, their heads or their faces are going to go straight into the ground.
They're going to hit the dirt pretty hard. Yeah. There's no question there. The interesting thing with what you said with that is and this is just like from my perspective of this, it's just if you have a certain level of control, you could actually stop that from happening.
Right.
And I can say undoubtedly that I have a certain level of control when it comes to a real life situation. I know what to use and what not to use within the heat of the moment. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to cross that threshold of violence before that person does to me. I will take the initiative if I have to. It's real simple. I'm not going to get sucker punched. I'm not going to turn my head to look at my friend if I got this person that's in front of me that I can tell just by his demeanor that I'm just waiting for that one little piece of information to where I can sucker punch you. You know, there's just certain things that like I'm never going to do an Ariminaga to somebody that's 6'4". I'm 5'9". It's pointless for me to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to look for something else that's going to be a little bit more applicable for me.
Let's go back to the sucker punch. You're not going to get sucker punched because in Aikido we practice my eye.
Yeah.
And my eye keeps you out of the range of a sucker punch.
But that distance can get closed very quickly, as you know, within a split second.
Yeah, but you're not going to wait for that to happen.
No, I'm not going to wait. Absolutely, I'm not going to wait for that to happen. But there's also, you know, there's a plethora of Aikido techniques that you could use to where you can avoid having somebody, you know, hit their head on the ground. I know you're just using that as an example, and that's. I'm a very quick thinker when it comes to that. Even when I was in the bar business and I had to control people with stuff, it was a lot of yubidori, a lot of finger grabs and sankyo and stuff like that. I've never dumped anybody on their head intentionally, just because I just know the ramifications of that. I mean, bouncers are not protected like how we were 20 years ago. Nowadays, a bouncer can get, you know, personally sued for something that he's being employed to do. Right. You know, the establishment will go, oh, well, you know, we have an umbrella in our insurance policy, you know, use of force umbrella, you have the right to defend, but within that umbrella,
there's a lot of gray area.
There's a lot of gray area. You dump the guy on that, you know, on his head, you split his head open. So that's, you know, sorry, but we're gonna have to turn our back on you, and you're gonna be screwed over. So it's as I, you know, because I started bouncing when I was 21. So as I saw how things were evolving, it was never good for the bouncer as years went on. Even though I still continue to do that job, but it's just it made me be well more aware of how I had to handle certain situations, especially violent situations. I mean, you get people that shove and push and swear and stuff like that, but you know, once a bottle gets clubbed over somebody's head, or it turns into a melee, it's like that's kind of where you got to be very in tune with what's going on, because
in Aikido, I would call that connection.
Yeah, because if you lose your composure, it's all of a sudden people are getting seriously hurt, and you're going to be the one that has, you know, blood splatter on you, and the cops are going to say, "How did this happen?" And they're going to be pointing at you, and you're going to be a guy in the corner and be like, "What? I didn't do nothing."
Yeah.
What? Well, you got 4 people over here that, you know, hey man, I'm just defending myself, you know, and that's a hard thing to do, is to actually sit there and defend yourself when law enforcement's involved, especially if there's no security cameras or whatnot. But I mean, it's a tricky thing. Yeah. So it's, you know.
So I would always go to the thing, would you rather somebody get hurt, or would you rather no one gets hurt? You know, I think it's rather no one gets hurt, right?
Well, for
those two choices, would you rather someone get hurt or no one get hurt?
Yeah, absolutely.
The third one was, would you rather they get hurt than you?
Well, yeah,
but
and that's how it always was. I did whatever I had to do that was necessary to make sure that I walked away from the situations. But in some situations, where you just said, would you rather get hurt or would you rather not get hurt?
Yeah.
Sometimes that just doesn't even apply, because like what you were talking about, the way how people's mindset is and the way how they are, is like once they are committed to hurting you, nothing's going to stop them except you, or their friends going, it's not worth it, you know. And even not even in the bar context. I mean, like I said, you can be at a gas station and bump into somebody accidentally, and they go, I don't like your haircut. Hey, sorry, dude, I do this myself. You know, saves me on a lot of hair products. Chicks dig it. You know, shaved head works nowadays. But it's like somebody gets in your face. It's like, I'm gonna walk away.
Wait, are you saying you don't like my haircut?
I didn't say that, dude. I didn't say that. This is just my preference. It's easy maintenance. But it's like I'll walk away from stuff. I've walked away from a lot of things, you know, and it's sometimes you just can't walk away. As much as you like to, there's sometimes you just can't walk away. Not meaning that the urge to beat the out of somebody's there. It's not that. It's they won't let you walk away.
Right.
You know, and when that happens, you have to make a choice. And unfortunately, you don't know what the flip of the coin is going to be, if it's going to be you or it's going to be them. But for me, being an Aikidoist and, you know, Jesus, 40 years involved in, or 30 years involved in Aikido, I feel like I kind of have the upper hand. Plus, with my background of working in the bar business for a long time, I could read people pretty well.
Right.
I can read their intentions. the body language of people like looking away, you know, and then boom, here comes the sucker punch type thing. I don't take my eyes off of people like that. I still, you know, Zanshin, I completely use acute awareness when I'm in situations like that, because you don't know who's coming out of right field.
Right.
You know, I always put myself in a situation where there's nobody behind me, you know, or I'm in a spot to where I know that someone's not going to come through the wall and grab me. I've always looked for ways to get around things like that, but you know, when you get pushed into a corner, you know, and you have no choice, and you try to talk yourself out of things, and it just doesn't work. It's like, then it's like, okay, here we go.
Do you have a closing thought? Because I want to get to the physical training.
I'm not ready to do the physical training, so
you're enjoying this very much.
Yes.
I'm
sure so is
too.
Corky. Remember, you're the one that said both you guys like to talk a lot.
Well, I enjoy this conversation very much. I don't see much disagreement here, except it seems like the final resolution is a bit different. Whereas Corky Sensei's methodology is no matter what, I want to protect this person. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
But what
Putting
if
in
you,
your
but
context.
what if you can't? What if you can't, and are you going to be able to muster up that energy to actually hurt somebody if you had to? Because if it was either you or him,
the question would have to be, do I have to?
let's say you have to, just for shits and giggles,
But
you have to.
what would the hypothetical be?
Good question. Some type of verbal disagreement that you have with somebody in whatever environment, restaurant environment, you know, out, you know, you're walking your dog and your dog happens to shit on somebody's picnic blanket, and the guy, I mean, I can understand it. I'd be pissed off too, you know, but what if? The what if and yeah buts are just, I mean, there's just millions of them. But say the guy just comes at you and just starts swinging at you nonstop, and no matter what you do, you take the guy down lightly, and then he gets back up and he just keeps coming and won't stop. It just won't stop.
That actually happened to me.
Okay, but he won't stop. You know, because if you took somebody like my nephew, and you, with his mentality and the way how he is, you know, he has a lot of MMA skill behind him. He's not going to give up. You're going to have to physically hurt him to stop.
But his MMA experience is not going to have him be the guy who started swinging at me.
Well, true. Let's just say some knucklehead out there just won't stop.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this story about this guy. Okay, so I hadn't been practicing Aikido maybe about 8 years, something like that, and so before my epiphany, and I was in an outdoor mall in California, in Santa Monica. It's called 3rd Street Promenade. My wife and I had gone to a movie. She was in the ladies' room, and I went out to enjoy the night air. And about from here to the fan, that distance, is a homeless guy, just totally, you know, looks the part, digging through the trash. And he comes up out of the trash and catches my eye. And I wasn't like staring him down or anything, just happened to catch his eye, and he charged me immediately. Came in swinging. And as soon as he was in range, full force punches toward my face. Okay, so in that distance, there's not much time for thinking, right? My first thought is, shit, I'm gonna have to do Aikido. Second was, is my Aikido gonna work, right? But then no more. So the thing I'd been practicing had been to send the connection out.
Okay.
You know, be aware. And in this awareness, what I call my connectors came out. His punches were sliding past me. These are fully intentioned toward my face. Now, as this was happening, for some crazy reason, because obviously I wasn't wearing an Aikido t-shirt, he didn't know I practiced Aikido. He's saying, I just got out of a joint. I learned karate in there, not some pissant martial arts school in the street.
Wow, okay.
And he's nailing these full blast. Now, in my head, I don't know why, because I didn't have the language and my understanding I had now. I don't know why his punches were not
Connecting.
landing, but they were full. There was no doubt in my mind, man, if I do, and I started thinking of techniques, And I just abandoned those because I thought, there's no way. I've never had this experience in the dojo.
Yeah.
And if I try anything, I'm going to have an opening and he's going to get through.
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing to me, as I was connecting with this guy, and he's just fucking going at it and straight to my face. At some point, I felt an opening. You know, talking about reading people. I don't know that I read people, but I felt this opening. So I said, you must be strong. And the guy, I swear to God, it was as if I hit him. Because he stumbled back, like just a little bit, just went off balance just a little bit. And then when he came back, he's punching again, but this time the punches are more punctuated. They weren't coming all the way through. And, but same thing. And this was my only physical action that I was doing was reaching out to this guy, offering, you know, here, grab my hand, you know, do something, right? Felt the next opening. And he's continuing to just tell me what it's all about.
Yeah.
And then I feel another opening. It's just a feeling. And I said, I mean, you must be strong to have endured all that. And again, it was like he got hit. Just stumbled even. Not a lot, but just enough to say he's off balance. Now, and of course the people in the mall are like, I don't see anything. I don't see anything, you know? I notice my wife's coming out. She's got this look on her face like, what the you know?
Yeah.
So I shoot her a look, it's okay. And now the guy's just storming at me like this. No more punches. His hands are just kind of doing this kind of and I'm just there with him, connecting. Little by little by little, the guy walks away saying, hey man, thank you so much. Really nice to meet you. Sorry to bother. So that's the only experience I have with that kind of thing. But it was really mind-blowing because I never would have thought Aikido would have manifested that way. I thought it was going to look like it did on the mat or it wasn't Aikido.
Yeah.
And later I kind of realized the physical dynamics of what was happening with those punches and what I was doing. And I can also understand why those things don't work with most Aikidoists and wouldn't have worked with me if I had tried to integrate one of my techniques into this situation. So for me, my process to get to this point where I felt it was more important to study a kind of Aikido in which my training is readying me for that kind of I'm not going to stop, right?
Mentality.
Yes. But doing it in such a way that it's okay if he keeps going. It's okay. Because his commitment to that is going to be what brings him to the ground, not me. Especially with guys that are bigger than me, you know. And I've been in some situations practicing Aikido with people that were 2 weight classes above me, and they nailed me, you know. I'm not one of those guys who says, well, Aikido works all the time because my ukes always go down. No, I got a practice partner in Texas who's weight or 1 or 2 classes of weight above me and a judo expert, and man, he'll nail me. But he'll nail me and he'll say, this is why it's happening. Because consciously I'm not aware of what I'm not doing right.
Yeah.
And then, oh, okay, got it. And then boom, then he can't nail me anymore for a little bit. And then he'll nail me again because I get distracted. Same thing that happens to everybody. So my training has become how to not slip into those defense modes which create resistance, which cause all of these other cascading effects in the conflict.
Okay.
So for me, it was because I had to rectify within myself that I didn't come to Aikido for self-defense. I came to it for these airy-fairy kind of ideas that things can be settled without bloodshed and without anybody getting hurt. And, you know, and as soon as I got into ASU, it was like that idea went out the window. You know, it was like learning how to dominate people and, okay, all right, I'll learn this. Oh, that's pretty cool. It's minimum amount of force and it's da-da-da-da. But then that other experience said, well, you think you know all but you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and we just proved it to you. We, the universe at large, just proved it to you. You better start thinking of this a different way. So then I kind of had to go back to those roots and rediscover what I had been missing. And so when I started looking at it from an intentional standpoint, I started to discover all this stuff that made my Aikido not work. Why all of those things and in the ukemi process and all those things. So for me right now, it's my study in Aikido is about uncovering those parts in me which produce resistance. Because when you think about the way an attack succeeds, it all has to do with resistance. The resistance of the chin to the punch is what causes the damage. A punch in which somebody turns out of the way isn't an effective attack. The effectiveness comes from the thing. The way I teach kata to my beginners is I don't teach them attack and defense. I teach them what I call stretches and spots. I teach them
Stretches and what?
Stretches and spots.
Okay.
And the reason I call them stretches is because if you look at any Aikido ukemi, you will see, realistically done, the person is off balance from the minute the attack starts. If Aikido is done properly, they're off balance the whole time. So I train them to understand how those attacks lead them off balance. Then on the other side, I teach them how to spot them, like you would spot somebody in a gym or weightlifting place, and so that they learn how to take care of the person while that person delivers themselves to the ground.
Huh.
Now, the things that stop that from happening is when they interfere, because that'll trigger a defense response in the attacker, or not being involved, because then the attack won't proceed. Because if there isn't a feeling from the attacker that that attack is on target, they're going to quit. They're going to change the attack. Normally you don't see people throw one punch. They're going to come in there and they're going to keep trying to get that connection.
Exactly.
So what I've been working on is connecting in such a way that that doesn't translate through the limbic system as a missed attack, that attack feels like it's happening. I had a really interesting experience. I was driving cross country a lot since in the last few years. And I have a friend in a dojo that's on the way, and I always stop in that town and practice with him. And he's fifth on through O-Sensei.
Okay.
And really wonderful guy. And he will practice with me. We'll just practice together. It's anything goes. And it's a complete always jiwa, so no one says what they're going to do. And he was coming in with yogaman strikes. And he knows, and he trusts me enough that he can deliver a realistic yogaman. So I'm doing what I normally do, and he's doing what Aikido people do. And then he said something to me, and it distracted me. And I thought about, for just, and these thoughts happen in an instant. I thought about changing what I was doing to do a technique, and bam!
Nails you.
Nailed me, knocked me out. Knocked me the out. When I got up, I had an almost detached retina.
Oh, God.
I had to go to the doctor, and they go, okay, you're really lucky. It's not detached, it should clear up, but But what I'm saying is, it taught me two things. First of all, my consciousness in that moment is of ultimate importance. The awareness.
Yes.
Okay, the Zanshin.
Absolutely.
Okay? The second thing was that he didn't just hit me that first time really meaning it. He meant it every time. He was giving me that same force every time. So it was like an affirmation to me, okay, well, you're doing something right. And it was a non-stop, we're not going to quit kind of deal. Every time he got off the floor, it was back on. So, I don't know. I mean, you can look at it in two ways. First of all, hey, there's no guarantees. No guarantees in any situation. There's so many variables in a real life situation that you can think, somehow I'm going to prevail. Somehow I'm going to do damage to this guy and they're not going to do damage to me. But for me, I can't put any faith in that because I've already been nailed,
Yeah.
a couple of times. And when you see, MMA, if you look at MMA, hey, there's one guy at the top. That means everybody else has been losing. Okay, some people, their records might be more wins than losses, but there are a lot of people who've lost more than they've won. So I can't put any faith in that. So if I'm going to put faith in something, for me, it's about putting faith in my training to make sure no one gets hurt. And so that's why I concentrate on that. It's not to, fool myself into some sense of, well, somehow I'm going to talk this guy out of it, or somehow I'm going to get away from him. He's going to stop attacking eventually. That's an illusion. That's the delusion. For me, it's about training in a way that my training is for the purpose of protecting that person so that it doesn't go any further than that. So, I got this kind of idea about heroism. And heroism is when someone puts themselves on the line for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So a police officer, a soldier, they put themselves on the line, people shooting at them so they can protect civilians. That's a hero, okay? You got firefighters. They're heroes also because they go into burning buildings to save innocent people, right? The difference is the flames aren't trying to kill them. A little different kind of a hero, right? The flames are just flames. They're not after the firemen. The other kind of hero is like a lifeguard, okay? Because the lifeguard, they're going into the water to save the thing that's the biggest hazard to them. Because most people that drown as lifeguards are drowned by the people they're trying to save. So if you've got any hesitation going into the water because you think that guy might kill you, you're not going to be an effective lifeguard. Those people have to trust their training and say, I know that guy's going to try to kill me, but I'm going to do my job. So that's my philosophy and why I practice the way I practice.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
I think your way is going to work for what you want to do. I believe my way is going to work for what I want to do. Can I fail? Yes, I can fail to employ the principles that I hold as true to this form. But I know the other way, I got much more, chance of failing. Look, I'm 64 years old, cancer survivor, putting on a few pounds. I'm not going to be able to go into an MMA ring and face, Ramsey Dewey. Think about
Speaking of Ramsey Dewey.
Yeah. But think about Ramsey Dewey. I mean, his last fight was because he got his skull caved in. And he said it was because this Chinese guy had this special kind of tape that was weighted tape, right? But hey, in a real life situation, guys got clubs, bottles, friends, bricks, sticks, And I used to practice. We used to practice at the Krav Maga studio, and the guy was a great Krav Maga instructor, and literally wrote the book, not the book maybe, but a book. And he said, "Well, you guys, it's real interesting what you're doing, but bottom line is, I'd rather talk to 12 than to be carried by 6."
Yeah,
right? You've heard that expression. And I said, "Well, hey, I'd rather be laughing with all 18 of them."
I was just listening to what you were saying. It's really interesting, your take on things, and some of the analogies that you used and whatnot. It's obviously, I'm not going to disagree with that. We obviously come from different scenarios and different lifestyles and things of that nature. 64 is not old. Just newsflash.
Yeah,
it's not old. You're
right.
still wiping
but
your
what
own
I'm
butt.
saying
Are you
is,
still wiping your own butt?
Then
you're not old.
Unless I can get my.
You're not old then. As far as I'm concerned, you're not old.
Well, I'm just saying I don't have the same energy when I was 30. And if I get some guy with 30 years old and looks like you who's been working out every day, there's going to be some
game changer.
physical advantage.
Absolutely, it definitely strength is going to come into play when it comes to that, and I think a lot of people misunderstand that as well. Is that Aikido's not about strength? Well,
right.
it's technically it's not about strength, but when you have strength, why not use that? If that physically hurt somebody, but you can physically restrain them because you're stronger than them, you're actually doing them a favor in that sense. But then if you have to turn it on, then it's unfortunately they're.
Well, you know what it probably comes down to? It comes down to a matter of faith.
Okay.
And I can tell you this stuff, and it can make sense to you on an intellectual level. Mm-hmm. But unless you believe it, it doesn't make any sense, and it's not gonna.
Well, remember, we come from the same original organization. I've training with Kevin O-Sensei for 16 years. I know what these feelings feel like because he did a lot of that. So I know exactly what that feels like. Part of me wishes that I was able to go back in time with who I am now and have him do that, because I don't think it'd be the same result.
Right, because your experience since then has given you a whole new perspective on things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with you know, that was my teacher, and, you know, proper, you know, being a good uke, and, you know, there were some things that I.
Well, were you a bouncer in those days?
Yeah. Yeah. I started training with Kevin Sensei when I was 18. And then once I was there for, you know, 3 years, I became a bouncer and stuff like that. And I remember one time telling him, because I was working at this bar called Dakota's in Schaumburg, and it was like literally like Roadhouse. Nobody had radio headsets, nobody had flashlights. There was like 5 of us. It's probably like a 300 person capacity like bar that turned into a shit show every Friday and Saturday night. It was unincorporated, so we had to deal with the sheriff rather than the actual town police, and the owner of the bar was in good with them. So I mean, there were times that we got into fights out in the parking lot, dragging somebody out, and the sheriff would roll up, and we would literally just walk back inside, and that would be the end of it. They wouldn't say a word to us. It's I remember telling, you know, Kevin Sensei a couple times of, you know, yeah, I used this technique today, or use this technique over the weekend, and blah blah blah, and he would look at me, and and the look on his face was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was like disappointing, because I actually used this, because why in the would I be doing it if I wasn't planning on using it at some point in my life?
Right.
You know, I'm not using this to learn how to do ballet. I mean, I'm using this, and I happen to get into the bar business, and now this is gonna serve me well. Hopefully, it would serve me well, and I don't think he was too keen on the idea of me actually taking what he taught me and applying that towards somebody. But I think what happened is, I think he realized, I'm glad you're using this, because the flip side of this is you could be hurt.
Right.
So at that point, I don't think
or you know,
yeah, I don't
blast
think,
somebody's head open.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Or that could happen to me as well. And I don't think he minded at that point. And I had a very unique relationship with him. And Bob Kamka can contest to this. It's nobody would talk to him the way that I would talk to him in the dojo. You know, even from an outside setting, if we went to, you know, go get something to eat or go to a bar after class or something like that, I spoke to him very, very freely. I mean, I literally could say whatever the hell was on my mind, where other people could not address him that way.
That's another, for me, bad throwback to the Japanese etiquette thing, is you can't question your teachers.
Yeah, I just happen to have this relationship with him that nobody else had. And I don't know, Bob, you want to chime in? Didn't Marsha Turner say something once about, wasn't somebody saying, you know, why, you know, something along the lines of, you know, how does Lenny get away with talking to Kevin like that? Or it wasn't like I was, you know, swearing at him, but I talked to him like a guy. I wasn't kissing the ring on his hand and stuff like that, and bowing and scraping. And didn't she say something? I remember you were telling me about that, or something, that she said something like, can you recall that?
I recall the subject matter, but I don't remember what was said.
Because I remember she was saying something.
I knew people were quizzical about your relationship with him, and the fact that he kind of almost treated you like an Ike son in many regards. And so you did have like a very unique bond or whatever, you know, over the years.
Because there was a lot of people that didn't have.
I think it
have that,
and it did make people not uncomfortable or anything like that, but they kind of scratched their heads like, oh, everybody calls me Sensei, and here's this guy calling him by his first name, you know?
Yeah, I did that,
you know,
quite often.
I mean, once the clap starts, yeah, it's Sensei, Sensei, Sensei.
Yeah.
But then once you leave the dojo, it's like, hey, bro.
Yeah, it was a much different type of
Yeah,
relationship.
well, I think that hierarchy in Aikido, it really doesn't serve us in the Western world, because we're people, especially you and me, are people who question that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if you can't question things, you got to accept everything on the word of somebody, and you can't feel it yourself, or you can't understand it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to.
And there has to be proof too. I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
there was stuff that, I mean, when I trained with Kevin, I mean, from the time of 5th Q, I was used as an uke. I mean, I took my 6th Q test literally 26 days after I joined because there was hour requirements in ASU,
Right.
and I'm just like, hey, when can I wear a Hakama? Because ASU you can wear a Hakama right after you pass your first test, and he's like, yeah, if you pass your
So
second
you threw
test.
yourself into it.
Yeah, oh my God!
Really?
I was like a crack addict, but I was on him left and right. And I remember when I passed my 6Q test, and then next thing I know, he's, Kevin never said, Bob, I want to use you for your Kemi. He just motioned at you with his hand. He just did this slight gesture, and you had to sit there. I would get back to the mat, back to the line when he would clap. I would race to get to the line, and I would stare at him like that dog that's waiting for a treat. And he would just motion to me, and I would get up and take Ukemi. And I did that all the time for him. I did that more than most of the black belts he would use, because he could sit there and actually throw me hard. And I welcomed it, because I felt that if I'm taking hard Ukemi for him and I'm allowing him to do this, I am giving him the chance to experiment with what he is doing, because he very well much knows that he's not going to hurt me, because I've never been hurt, other than the fact, having a broken dislocated toe from one of my students stepping on my foot during a Don test.
Nice.
But I've never been hurt in the dojo from giving honest attack or being thrown hard, because I respond well, and I emulated other people that were in my dojo. Marsha Turner was one that I emulated a lot, because she moved very quickly and
if
elegantly.
I can say something, I think one of the things I admire about you is your attention and your attentiveness to everything about this.
Like, that's how I was raised.
Yeah,
That's
obviously.
That's how I was raised. I mean, I was never that guy that sat there and stared up at the ceiling when Kevin was doing a technique. I wanted to know what the name of it was. Like, I was creating an encyclopedia in my head. Every time we would do a technique, I'd be like, what's this called? What's this called? What's this called? What's that called? And I remember one time I asked him, I think Bob might have been there when he said, Sensei, what's this called? He goes, I'm not exactly sure. He goes, if you don't ever know the name, it's Kokyunage.
Gentlemen, we have to stop there. We are at
Whoa, I'm not done. It was like 10 minutes of talking.
We're at rollout here. Thank you guys both very
We're
much.
still recording here.
Battery's about to die.
Thank you guys. It's perfect
man.
time to stop. Thank
So
you both
anyways.
so much. Great conversation.
That was great.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. Now I can.
We're here with this epic Aikido meetup, and I just want to read everybody's name who made this possible. Thank you so much. Thank you for contributing. Fiona McCauley, thank you very much. Mandy Barber, Tony Trippi, Dave Sylvester, Roman Soloni, Jamie Razor, David Siska, Robert Slaughter, Zach Smith, Corey Jewell, Ken Takamoto, Alan Payne, Steve Rideout, Brendan Hussey, Fiona Kelty, and Genghis Polanco. Thank you so much for everyone who donated, and there were several anonymous donations. Thank you so much. And we look forward to training with all of you soon, I hope.